This channel is called Frojax, and I saw them debating some person, and it's always very ignorant when you see people arguing about stuff they barely have any information about. And I'm not even saying go get a university degree and come back with it. Just at least know the very little. Read at least one book about the topic that you're talking about. At least one. I promise you it's going to be better. Also, always have a map present so you know the exact areas that is being talked about, at least.
What did you want to debate about?
Nah, I seen videos of y'all talking about, how white people are better than blacks and all this stuff. And when it comes down to it, basically y'all got everything off of leeching off us. Y'all leached off our land, leached off our labor, leached off everybody. Really, everything y'all got from leeching off other people. Leached off Native American land, leached off. Now y'all trying to leech off of Venezuela oil, all that stuff.
So there's an absolute truth in what he's saying here. See, the Europeans did leech off of every single person. They leached off of the coast of Africa, taking the slaves from that area and also some trade goods from that area. They leached off of the Americas because, of course, they took over the continents. And then they leached off of the far sides, right? Asia and those places, which I have a full video that's coming that's about that. Of course, the second part of the leeching is taking the inventions made by the people, not crediting the human beings in that area, only being put together later by people who are reading writings. If we limit it to those that will satisfy the minds of the Europeans, it'll be paper, stamp technology, or printing technology, the compass, and the gun or the cannon.
So it's like I think y'all don't have like a clear reality of what's really going on and what's happening and what happened in the past.
What is your name? Just really quick, I just want to make sure. I'm Jackson. This is Forrest.
My name Dr. 16 on IG. I was on Twitch. I mean, I was on X, but they.
So basically, my understanding is the point that you're making is that white people are burdensome and they leech off of other racial groups of people.
Any group that does large scale colonization and depletes the land of their resources would be considered that. I mean, he's saying white people here because it qualifies for white people. And so he wants to spread it to any white person so that all white people can feel attacked. But in real life, what they're saying, and it's a very simple thing, is that if you go to different continents and you drain them of their resources so that you can fund your spaces, then you are being burdensome.
Yeah, basically y'all leached off everybody.
But what was America called before the white colonials came here?
What an irrelevant and pointless question. He's asking, what did the different Native American tribes that were scattered all over America have as a united name for the Americas? And the answer is, of course, they didn't have a united name. But if you're really curious about what Native Americans called the entire continent, because they had words for the continent, the Andes people called it Kam Anahuk, and then they called the bottom one Tawantin Suyo. Un sola civilización en todo el continente con dos grandes centros de desarrollo cultural al norte, el Kam Anahuk. Basically, it's saying one civilization. In the north, it's Kem Anahuk. In the south, it's Tawantusoyo. Tawantusoyo is a Andes word for the biggest and largest area or world in South America. So the civilization that was there used this word. And then Kam Anahuk is a word that was used by the biggest civilization over there. This is only one. We've got the Haudenosaunee, who had a word for the land they lived in, obviously. I think Kam Anahuk means the surrounded areas with around the sea, so surrounded by sea. I think the word the word he's looking for is Turtle Island, probably because there's like certain, basically they're live, and his certain crew have got certain words that they always look for so that they can laugh. One of them is Mansa Musa, because in their head they think that everything that's real and is amazing in other civilizations is historical revisionism. And they think Turtle Island is historical revisionism when it's an actual documented thing. So, for those of you that don't know, another word that was used for the American continent, namely South America, is kumaru. Kumaru is the Quechan word for sweet potato. It's also the Polynesian word for sweet potato in New Zealand, in the Maori language, in Tonga, in Hawaii, in all of these places. They have this word kumaru, which proves that linguistically that the Polynesians had migrated to America. But they called kumaru because that's where they got the sweet potato from, a key trade product. Surprisingly, because Wikipedia is kind of iffy, they have it here. Specialists in Amerindian languages, Willem Adela and Peter Moiskin, have suggested that the word for sweet potato is shared by Polynesian languages and languages of South America, Proto-Polynesian Kumala, compared to Rapa Nui Kumara, Hawaiian Uala, Maori Kumara, may be connected with Quechan and Aymara word Kumar or Kumara. Adalar and Moiskin asserts that the similarity in the word for sweet potato is near proof of either incidental or sporadic contact between the Central Andes and Polynesia. It's actually like 100% proof, but some researchers citing divergence time estimates suggest that sweet potato may have been present in Polynesia thousands of years before humans arrived there. However, the present scholarly consensus favors the pre-Columbian contact model.
But what was it called? It was called whatever the Native American language, whatever they called it in their language.
Well, here's the thing. The Native Americans, there were about 600 different tribes on the land, and all...
Well, that was stupid. That's like saying Europe didn't exist because all Europeans did not call Europe Europe before the word Europe was adopted. Like the Vikings didn't call Europe Europe. The goddamn Celtics or whatever didn't call Europe Europe. The Picts didn't call Europe Europe. It was really, the groups that really made big considerations for words like that were the Greeks. Because there were many tribes, in their head, this means that there was no word for the continent. And therefore, because these tribes were not united, therefore the continent does not exist. I don't know where they're going with this, which, by the way, that's why I wanted to preface that in the beginning, because I knew that they use the most loose arguments and then they'll dismiss the most strong arguments. One of the stupidest things is, oh yeah, there was more than 600 tribes. Okay, but the American continent right now has a whole bunch of countries which are divided. Blast the fact that they call it the word America. Who cares?
All of them had different names, different tribes. They had different sub-religions. They were all distinct people. So there wasn't really one country. It was like 600, if you can call it a country, which they didn't actually believe in borders or land ownership. So there wasn't even the concept of nationhood within the nation.
Yeah, they were a free people.
So again, here what we're dealing with is people who have no idea what they're talking about. American states, before the Colombian, whatever they want to call it, came in, they had clear borders, and they had names for their little states. Mayab was clear, and right after Mayab, there'd be somebody else's territory, and you could not pass. But not only did they have signs across their country, they also had signs within the country that prevented people from freely moving there. For example, in Tikal, there's a sign that says you are about to enter Tikal. and then it gives you specific permissions about how you enter that specific area. You know what's funny? Anybody who's ever watched cartoons before, go watch what's it called? That old cartoon, Road to El Dorado, and you will see that different civilizations in the Americas, literally, I mean, the Mayans are the best. They put up big stone warnings with their gods on them. Not only did they have what you would call states, but Petén was one of those areas that was a province where Tikal could be found. Some regions had natural borders, like Al de Flores, which was the Petén central area, so Petén Island, and then Petén used generally for provinces around this area. And then, second of all, you have cities like Yaksa, which again have clear border markings that even the people within the country had to travel in a different route in order to travel. There's all kinds of rules, but everybody was just free and they could just do whatever they wanted, right? Think about what you're saying for a second. That's not even true in like tribal civilizations. Like someone from South Africa can't just wander into Maasai territory and just gallivant.
Well, they weren't exactly free. I mean, they were constrained by their biological limitations and their
You know they had
sociocultural
governments, right?
surroundings. Well, I
You do
mean,
know that they had governments, right?
sure, like
What a stupid thing to say. They weren't free, they were governed by their biological limitations. That means the word free means nothing because everything that is alive is governed by their biological limitations. That means the word free is useless in that sense. What a stupid reaction. The real word, I mean, in real life, it's because he's trying to go against the word free because he realized that he put himself in a trap. Either he has to accept that there were borders or they were free to roam the entire continent, which is not going to play well for any of his arguments that he's trying to put in place. And of course, the black guy said, um, they had governments, right? Which is absolutely true.
Not in the same way that we do.
all sorts of people will have different hierarchies of order and power structures, but they do manifest differently. But when you say we leached off of black people, like be specific, like what exactly?
That's right. Run away from the American idea because there you're going to lose big time. Go back to how they sort of, he said you leached from everyone, not just black people. That's the point. You guys took every invention, took all things from around the world. You guys were losing until this whole circumnavigating the globe, which is an idea that was taken from Middle Eastern people. If you don't believe me, go look up how many Middle Easterners had tried before. Which, by the way, some people don't know. Africans have been traveling from the north, so from Ethiopia all the way around to Nigeria for a long time.
Did we leech off of black people?
Like you leached off our natural resources, meaning our gold, our diamonds, countless stuff that we had over there. You leached off our knowledge. Well, let me take you back to the beginning. You leached off our knowledge. We created religion, civilization, all that stuff. The first civilization on this earth was on the Nile River, the bottom of the Nile River. They traveled up onto Saudi Arabia, whatever, and then they was the first one to write it down. That's why they get credit for being the first.
So, of course, civilization is very difficult to write down on who invented it first and who created it first, because what do you consider civilization, right? Like, do you start it at writing? Do you start it at buildings? Do you start it at organization? Do you start it at city states? Do you start it at one local thing? Like, where do you start that idea of civilization? And the real answer is nobody knows. And so, depending on how you're going to define it, most places around the world are going to have civilizations going back to around 10,000 years ago. let's give the AI overview example of this. So, civilization refers to an advanced, complex human society characterized by urban development, social hierarchy, specialized labor, and organized communication like writing. So, all of these, all of these are exist in so many different places. So, organized communication like writing, in other words, it can be anything like proto writing or something like that. Because if they said writing, then a lot of the places that we call civilizations would disappear. But things like writing, then you can go as far back as, like I said, 10,000 years ago, because different areas had proto writing in several different locations of the world, including the Americas. Then, if you go specialized labor, again, Africa had, ironsmiths and all these other things. And, you're going back. Social hierarchy, that one is almost everywhere. Urban development. Now, it depends what you mean by urban development, because if urban means city or town, you must remember city or town doesn't mean it has to be made of stone. In fact, most cities in some areas that people like are made completely of like paper and wood. Like take Japan, for example. So this becomes a problem. Now, if you want to make it fixed, if you say it has to have writing, it has to have specialized labor, it has to have a social hierarchy, it has to have urban development, then you start reducing it to the point where, I mean, most of Europe didn't have civilization until much later, because writing did not exist in most of Europe until the Greeks really brought it to those areas. And by the time the Greeks bring it to everybody in Europe, around about 800 BC, it's already reached Ethiopia. It's already reached the Swahili coast. It's already reached the Garamanti Emporium. It's already reached North Africa. It's been in Egypt for thousands of years. And of course, all of the civilizations that I just mentioned had specialized labor, had social hierarchy, urban development. Tifinagh script, which is associated with the Tuareg and other Berber tribes, and then also the Garamantes, is literally 2,000 years ago. Like, that's like the oldest, easiest forms of it that we can find. Then they go back to, something BC in their loose terms, but them as Berber writings is around 2,000 years ago, which is about the same time where Britain starts to have some form of writing. Places like Niger had writing before Britain.
First civilization, but the first actual civilization was along the Nile River, at the bottom of the Nile River. Those were the same people that traveled up, went up to Saudi Arabia and all that stuff.
Oh, before I forget, Sudan, because of Egypt, both ways, trade and invasions, Sudan has been using Egyptian hieroglyphs since 2000 BC. So chew on that.
Okay.
So when I say leech, I mean in that y'all basically got everything y'all know and everything y'all have off of Africans.
Okay, so
Like everything
basically,
comes
yeah, my
from us.
understanding, fair enough. My understanding is that everything that white people are using in the world today is a product of, in a nefarious way, going after what black people had originally. And so black people have all the tools and the knowledge and the natural resources, and they could perform just as well without the intervention of white people or European people. So a question I would have for you then, using that logic, is that what do you think the quality of life would be for black people if white people never interfered with them?
So again, these people who have no concept about Africa, no skill about Africa, no understanding about Africa, think that the quality of life in Africa was pretty bad. In real life, it was pretty good. Most people who lived past the age of 30 would reach about 60. This is something that's been known for a long time. What was high was infant mortality, which brought down the general age of people. So if you're averaging out all the ages of human beings, then you're going to get a lower age of death. But if you take out the children, anyone who lived past 30 was going to live a very long life.
Would they be
I
better
think
off?
hell yeah. Do you know what we was building pyramids, something that y'all can't figure out to this day how we built. If y'all
But
would have
black
left
black
Africans,
people didn't build the pyramids, though. Those were
yes they
Coptic
did.
people. Those were
Do you know?
Coptic people.
You say they were who?
Coptic.
Those
They're
were-
North African. They're Semitic Arabs.
Those were Coptic people. They're Caucasoid.
So of course they're going to bite because everybody is triggered by Egypt. But let's go with what they're saying. Let's say the Coptic people, the white Coptics, they don't know that there's black Coptics, but the white Coptics that they're obsessed with, they're the ones that built Egypt. Okay, they built interesting civilizations like Egypt. They built these giant buildings. They did all of that. Where are they now? Right? If the answer is before Europeans, things were worse, right? So the ancient Egyptians could build pyramids and stuff like that. The Europeans came, the Greeks, the Romans, and then the later Europeans, the Turks, the British, the French, the Portuguese, they all came. So is Egypt better today in terms of technology than it has ever been before? Like the pyramids, the pyramids are native inventions of those Coptics, right? So where are the equivalent inventions today? Glass was invented in Egypt. All kinds of things were invented in Egypt. We don't even need to get into it to understand it. Everybody knows that Egypt. So why are there no inventions today in Egypt? The Coptics are still there, right? They're the Caucasians, right? Because that's the word they switch to whenever they want to take credit for other people. But then those same Caucasians they want to kick out of Europe. They're like, oh, this is Europe, this is our land. But then they're Caucasians at the same time. But whatever. But at the same time, I want to say, so what happened then? If the Europeans had nothing but a positive on every civilization that they got into, how come Egypt, when it was invaded by the Europeans, turned into a hellhole? If we use something like genetics, right? If we say the skill is in their genes, right? The people who built the pyramids, the skills is in their genes. They should be, I don't know, 4,000 times better than everybody else in the world. In fact, let's expand it even further. The Middle East, the entirety of the Middle East. So Sumeria, the Hittites, the whatever, all of them, all these groups, the Turks, all of them, they were the height of technology compared to everybody else. 4,000 BC, nobody could compare. You can even add the Indus Valley there, which is located close to the Middle East. Add everybody there. How come they're not producing the majority of the technologies today? If they were this giant thing. Now, you don't want to admit it, but it's because of European powers that got to those areas. People don't understand this, but I'm going to make a video about it. But Asia was almost fully conquered by the time that Europeans had still been on the corners of Africa. The most sophisticated place, quote unquote, was basically turned into a place where Europeans go to drain resources.
Listen to what I'm saying.
Go ahead.
Do you know before the Arab invasion of between 600 BC, everybody in Africa was black. So yeah, you could talk about the Arabs or the white people who took over Egypt after 600 BC, but before that, everybody was black. They was building pyramids. They had all type of religion. They had all that stuff. All that stuff started way before y'all came. Way before the Arabs came.
There
People in
is
North Africa was black.
there's
Dark skin like you.
there's zero anthropological or archaeological evidence that points to
look up
sub-Saharan
Jessica.
Africans.
Again, the debate doesn't even have to go in this direction. The simple truth is, and the simple point is, why is it that those countries that are located in the Middle East, if you want to include Egypt there, you want to include North Africa, go ahead. Al-Andalus, if you want, Spain, and all of these countries, how come they were at the height before the Europeans got there, and then all of a sudden they just fell? When the Europeans got them, they suddenly fell, both in profits and creative ability.
Look up who?
African is African. Black is black. Look up Dexter Cappy
No,
right now.
African isn't African. There's
It
this.
is. Are you crazy? So what is
Okay.
Africa? Two different countries?
Well, let me ask you this: no, it's a continent. First of all, is Nigeria the same as Somalia?
This is the most meandering conversation ever. Like they can't even stick to anything. They talked about America in the beginning. Keep that in mind. And now we're asking if Nigeria is the same as Somalia. What a stupid question. Of course, Nigeria is not the same as Somalia. They're two completely different places. But in what way do you mean they're the same? I mean, they were Islamic at one time. They both had the same general Islamic culture, writing in Ajami script. And like, what do you mean? Are they the same?
It's two different things. South Africa is different from North Africa.
Okay,
Before y'all invaded, it was all one black people.
well, one second, really.
I mean, what the black guy is saying is absolutely true. At one point, the entire continent was covered with black people. The date of when the Europeans, not the Europeans, the Middle Easterners started coming into Africa is still a debated topic, and especially in mass, like how big they are. They find dots of Asians in Africa, which of course is curious because, you know, why aren't they finding these large amounts of black Africans within Africa?
I just want to make sure.
Not saying it was one.
I just want to make sure we're on the same page. So, are Nigerian people distinct from Ethiopian people? Are they different?
Again, another question that is too vague to answer. Are Nigerians distinct from people from Ethiopia? Depends what you mean. Like, do you mean that they're completely different? Because no, they're two black people. But do you mean they're like Nigerians are not? Because there's people who live in Nigeria who are very distinct in the same way that Ethiopians would be, who are in the same country. Like a Tuareg is different than an Igbo.
Are they exactly the same?
Back then it wasn't. Now they are, because now the Ethiopian people have Arab blood in them, European blood in them.
So this part where he says, are they exactly the same? Again, this is too strict, because if you say, are they exactly the same? Twins are not exactly the same. Goddamn, what you call that? Families are not the same. Exactly the same means, basically exactly the same means it's the same thing. Meaning that if you take a rock and you split it in half, they're no longer exactly the same. It's just two different halves. Not the same, not equal.
That's why they lighter, have straight hair, all that. But back before, like I'm trying to tell y'all, back before the invasion of the Arabs and the Europeans, Arabs invaded first at 600 BC. Before 600 BC, so that means 598 BC, all the way back to the beginning of the time, everybody in Africa was black, dark skinned black. Some was brown. Like, you know, we have different shades of black people. Like, you know, the San people, right? They look like Chinese people.
I have a question for you. I have a question for you, and we can be fair. We'll go back and forth. We'll be cordial here.
I mean, so that I can finish this off, because now they're about to move on to another topic. The difference between a Khoisan person and an Ethiopian person and whatever is about the same difference that a Nigerian has to a Chinese person. It depending on how you group it, you can group Chinese people with Nigerians in a way that you can't group them with Khoisan people. The way that we do it now is based on the way people look. Obviously, we could just take all the people who sort of look African and then say they're all black. But if you do that, you have to include people who are outside of Africa, you know, like the Andaman Islands, Melanesia, Polynesia, the Americas, and then you group them all together and they're all black. And this includes some Europeans, because Europeans at one point were very dark skinned. But you can obviously group them by height, which, you know, Nigerians, Sudanese, Scandinavians, those people would fall more into that group, and then other people would fall in a more shorter group. You can group them by whatever. You could pick features and things that exist. I mean, like R1B, that will group people and will take out other people.
But basically, what you're saying is that white people's ability to thrive is dependent upon the
Others,
exploitation of black people
yeah,
or other people. So,
others,
what would
period.
be okay?
Mostly
So
others.
that's your opinion. What would be an example, a modern example of a nation of black people who were succeeding or thriving without white or European intervention?
Mauritius would be an answer that's given. But of course, the question would be without white intervention, what does that mean? Without white intervention, you said which people in the modern world are thriving without white intervention. Let's try this way: which people in any world today are completely disconnected from either tribe? First, answer that question. If you can answer that question, then I'll give you your answer. Which people today have no connection to any other race except their own, and in the modern world who are thriving? When you do that, then I will give you your answer, which is stupid because there's no answer. That no one can answer a question like that because in the modern world we're all connected. But if you're gonna take it as a vague thing, Mauritius is thriving and it's got no intervention. If you mean like colonization or whatever you want to call it, like they're not colonized now.
Botswana,
Where's that? Botswana.
Botswana.
Okay, and how are they
Yeah,
thriving?
but you
How are they
asked me that
thriving?
question. They have they
So I don't know what he considers thriving. I'm gonna guess what he means is what are the top five richest countries in the world, and if you're not in that top five, then in his eyes you're not thriving, which is not how thriving works. In fact, I would say there's no civilization, very little countries in this world today who would not be considered thriving, especially from a human perspective. I mean, what do you mean not thriving? I mean, in Botswana, they got Gaborone, the capital, which is doing pretty well. Poverty rate has gone down to around 15%, which used to be way higher. And for the region that it's in, it's very low compared to so many other places. Now, if the only way to thrive means that you have to be the top five cities in the world or top five countries in the world, then, that means the word thriving literally means you have to be the best, which is not true.
paid off all their loans. But let me tell you, bro, Africa.
The payday
You know what's
loans.
happening with France? You know what's happening with France? They kicked not Botswana, but I think South Africa, one of the countries in Africa. They kicked France out of. This is why I say y'all leech off Africa. They kicked France out of Africa, so France can't leech off Africa no more. Guess what's happening with France right now? They're going broke. All the European countries are going broke right now because y'all can't leech off Africa no more. Africa teamed up
European
with.
countries are struggling because they're experiencing waves of immigration and non-white people who are committing sexual
struggling
assault against
because
Native Europeans. That's the
Well, isn't that a trip? Okay, let's get down to it. So you're saying this. This is what I love about these people. They always say some stupid things in a row and they don't even see the problem. So Europeans are suffering now because migrants from even the places that they love, North Africa, right? The Caucasians of North Africa, which now are no longer Caucasians, now they're evil Muslims, but they're suffering because those people are traveling into Europe and then they're committing assaults and all those other things, which is ruining Europe. Okay, well, we'll go with that. If a large amount of people migrate to a continent and then they start committing assaults and stuff like that, they can ruin the continent. That's what Europeans did all over the world. How come it affects Europe negatively, but everybody else it doesn't? By the way, the immigrants that are migrating in these European countries, they didn't come there, as rude as the Europeans came, who just took over all of these places and put everyone in a little area and then took over the majority of the places, took all the resources and then ran away. But somehow, and I don't know how this works, I don't know how these people's brain works, somehow they can understand how a large group of people coming into your area can ruin it, right? Like South Africans talk about how Nigerians can come into South Africa and ruin it because, whatever, 1 million people coming in is going to ruin the country. But 10 million Europeans coming in and, blasting everything and taking everything. That doesn't ruin the country. How about enslaving millions of South Africans at the Cape and other places? How about enslaving Indians, taking Indians from India and enslaving them and bringing millions of them over here? Is that ruining it, or is that like cool? Like that's just benefiting people because at least they're enslaved. That's cool. What are you talking about? People are crazy.
You know
Opposite.
why?
But where are the where are the black people that are thriving outside of European influence?
Botswana did it. You do your research, look up Botswana.
Compared to what?
Botswana
Compared to
paid.
China? Compared to America? This is not a superpower in the
I knew it. When he said thriving, he meant they must be the top 5 countries. He's like, oh, thriving compared to what? China and America. So the top 2 countries. If you're not China and America, you're not thriving. Are you serious? If you're not China, so you don't think Canada is thriving because Canada is not doing as well as China is. You don't think Australia is thriving? It's not a superpower. You don't think it's thriving? These guys are mixing terms. They don't understand what they're talking about. The majority of people in Botswana are doing pretty well. They're in a position where they could change their lives if they wanted to. That's called thriving. See, the word thriving is a very simple word. Thriving means you're no longer just surviving. So after survival comes thriving. Where you can store food for the winter, where you can do stuff like that so that you can change your life. And every now and then, 1 in a million people comes up and creates an invention. But because these people have no concept about what they're talking about, they think that thriving means you're literally the highest civilization ever. Which, by the way, I love how they keep throwing China in there. They'll talk about all this Caucasian nonsense, and then they'll bring up China, who is not Caucasian, and they'll make this giant exception, which, by the way, proves them wrong. But then they'll be like, oh, yeah, China, it proves us wrong, but it proves us right at the same time. No, it doesn't. It's proof that the whole Caucasian supremacy thing is nonsense.
world and the geopolitical stage.
This is what I'm telling you. You cannot compare Africa to the world because nobody has been leached off like Africa has.
Everybody has attacked each other throughout
Let me
history.
finish what I'm saying real quick.
So let's answer it this way, because this guy doesn't understand this. India invaded, was one of the greatest places in the world, turned into an area full of slums and all this other thing. Before, it had a system that worked, and I mean, the mess that you see today just did not exist back then. Saudi Arabia, Yemen, 2 of the highest civilizations. Aden, the Sultan of Aden, one of the richest places. Yemen today is an embarrassment. And that's not because of magic. That's because the European powers that came in and overturned everything, destroying the civilization. Persia, Iran, literally one of the best civilizations to ever exist. One that gave people freedoms and everything. Gone. If you want to go to Europe, we can even say, okay, Italians and Greeks. These were some of the most creative Europeans ever. Where are their inventions? Where are their 100%? Like, these guys should be the height. America should not even compare to those places.
It's easy to say, oh, they're not doing nothing now. I guess not. You've been robbing them for 400 years. How could you expect somebody to be up just like you when you're the one been leeching off them, robbing them for 400 years? That's like me robbing you every day when you come off your job and then coming back a week later and say, why are you still on the bottom? Why are you still struggling?
Well,
You took all my money. You took everything I have. You robbed me. You killed me. You did all these things to me. And then you turn around and ask, why are we in the position that we in? Because the reason why is because you put us in that position. If, like I said, if you would have left us alone, we would have been ahead of time. Me personally, I think we would have been communicating with other life forms now.
I mean, that is where the world was headed. I mean, rocket power had already been, experimented with. So it's, I mean, it's not the worst thing ever. And of course, when the Russians were beating the Americans in science during the Cold War and all of that, what did the Americans do? They went out of their way to try and derail that.
Well, if I personally, if I were you, I would. Yeah, if I were you, I would probably feel grateful that I was born in America versus Africa, because your life is likely a lot better than it would be if you were born in Ghana or wherever it is.
South Africa, right?
Well, here's the question.
I love this generality. Your life would probably be better if you were born in America compared to being born in Africa. Well, it depends who you are. If you're one of the people who is very poor or is targeted or any of that stuff, you'd probably be better off being born in a rich family in Africa than being born in a poor family in America. And I know some people say if you compare their poor to our poor, if you compare poor people to poor people, you get poor people. It really depends on who you are. This whole that doesn't even make sense. Come to South Africa, come to Botswana, come to so many other countries in Africa, Mauritius, blah, 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 Kenya, or whatever. Most people over there are doing okay. By the way, notice how almost everything they're saying is comedian stuff. I can tell that the stuff they're getting it from is basically it's memes that are stolen from stand-up comics. This isn't the reading books. At one point, in fact, we're probably going to hear Africans didn't even bring a canoe to come save the slaves from America, which again is stupid because they brought ships to come save people from America. This is written down knowledge. And they negotiated with the Europeans to bring back some of the slaves from America. But, if you're educated by comedians, then that's what you're going to get.
Because you're saying the reason why sub-Saharan Africa.
How did America get to where it was?
Well, hold on.
Who created America economy?
Well, are we going to go back and forth? You gotta let me ask you a question. I just want to make sure we're on the same page here.
Answering your question with my question, you said I should be grateful that I'm born in America.
That wasn't a question. I said if I was you.
How did America get to where that?
Oh yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Should the millions of Native Americans who were destroyed, should they be grateful that there are new people in America?
We have to go back. We have to be balanced here, though. Let's go back and forth.
All I was saying, it wasn't a question. I was just saying if I.
First of all, how is this balanced? It's 2 versus 1. That's not balanced. You guys are going to get twice the time to talk because you appear as if you're separate entities, but you're saying the exact same thing. Which again, I call comedian talk, trying to be funny.
Was you, that's how I would probably feel. But again, that's an unfair me putting me in your shoes. Anyway, my question to you would be, if Africa is the state that it is because we've leached off of it, how come it was in effectively the same state, arguably worse than it is now when we first got there? European colonists, as you would put it, they got there and there wasn't even written languages in most of the countries below the Sahara Desert.
Or wheels or second-story buildings.
Yeah, they were very underdeveloped.
Okay, so let's address everything one by one. So he says European colonists, as you would call it. What would you call it? What would you call it? What else are they besides people who colonize lands, as you would call it? What the hell are you talking about? And then secondly, he says there were no second-story buildings. What are you high? Africa had a ton of buildings and cities that had second-story buildings. I mean, just look at these. And then you say that Africa didn't have the wheel, which I've shown images of African wheels before. I don't have to waste my time doing that stuff. I want to ask a question. How come the civilizations that were there, like the Kingdom of Congo, I'll even give you this, right? If you want, you could say the Kingdom of Congo is a result of the Portuguese. It's not, because the first Portuguese that got there documented the city of the area. But let's say the Portuguese did whatever they did. How come it's not there anymore? Isn't that weird? Like for something that's thriving, right? The colonists come and they make it thrive. How come the Adel Sultanate falls into ruin? How come the Niger states fall into ruin? Mali falls into ruin. Great Zimbabwe falls into ruin. The Egyptian Sultanate falls into ruin. How come all of these areas where Kanem Bornu falls into ruin, the Bonyuru fall into ruin, the Buganda fall into ruin? How come all the places that they got to that were thriving areas that were trading with powers from around the world, how come they fell into ruin? It sounds like colonial takeover. And also, if they're thriving so much, right? It's like, oh yeah, they're thriving. How come when those colonials left, how come those countries, and I'm not just talking about African countries, I'm talking about India, China, all of these places, how come they were left in a state that was less than any of those other places? If them coming in made them better, how come when those people left, they had to pick up the pieces?
When we got
That's
there,
a
there was
lie.
that's
That's
not a
a that's a
lie.
lie.
That's
When
scientifically
y'all came when the European came to Africa in when the transatlantic
James,
trade started in 1409. Am I right?
something like that. Yeah.
So during that time, you had black people like Mansa Musa, who was the richest
Oh,
person
that.
in the history of
Yeah.
the world. Period. So you can't sit there and say that, oh,
Oh yeah, that. Oh my God. Why bring that up? Why bring up a well-documented historical event and a historical civilization? Why do that? Why talk about a thing where most Europeans at the time were very concerned with and wanted to take over the gold reserves in those areas? Ah, why bring those things up? Oh my God, this is silly. We should not bring up important historical regions when we talk about Africa. What we have to do is we have to talk about, you know, things that don't matter, and we have to make up giant generalizations like the entire continent of Africa did not have writing. Getting specific and talking about a specific place where there's writing from people who actually went into the areas and came back and said that there's immense mines in those areas. Oh my God. Why waste our time doing that? I know what you guys are going to do. You're going to go and find actual writings from the 1600s of Europeans confirming that there's gold in these regions. Blah, what a trick. First of all, this is a Afrocentric trick that you guys do where you find written records that prove the information that you guys are saying, and then you want us to believe it, when in real life we know that we can laugh away all of this by just laughing. So let's not waste our time reading actual information when we could just dismiss it offhand because our favorite internet comedians have dismissed it, so it must be fake.
they was undeveloped and all this stuff until y'all came over there. They had their own stuff going on. They had,
Yeah.
Like
but
what?
I
Like
mean,
what?
they had a lot of stuff going on. They was making money. They was doing what they do in their culture.
Okay, so they said like what, and I have to admit something. They didn't have anything. They had nothing. Let's read this verse from or this passage from Offered Dapper, who is going to say in many words that these guys had nothing. So he says, the kingdom of Meli, likewise, so named from its prime village, the residence of their kings, hath for the northern confines Ghana and Guinea, southwards deserts and barren mountains, and in the last the jurisdiction of the Gago, westernly bounded with a mighty forest which runs 60 miles along the banks of Niger to the verges of the ocean. The village Meli is very large and contains about 6,000 families, standing 30 days' journey from Tambut, which is Timbuktu. The country abounds in corn, flesh, cotton, and hath a king, but tributary to those of Tambut. Here they are all Mohammedans and have mosques in which wanting colleges. They not only perform their daily devotions, but in their temples instruct their people and disciples in their laws and doctrine. These were the first apostates from Christianity to Mohammedanism. These people formerly were governed by a great prince of the royal, whatever the word is, descended from the prince of Libya, uncle to the king of Morocco, and the onwards Josephus. The sovereignty continued in its progeny until blah blah blah, king of Tambut, around 1520, made the king of merely tributary and reduced all these countries under his subjection. The kingdom of Tambut hath its denomination from a city founded, as they say, by the king Mansa Suleiman in 1221, about 3,000 or 3 miles from arm of the Niger, lying 180 miles from the country of Dara and Suga, whatever. The city gloried formerly in the great fabrics and sumptuous buildings, but now condemned to simple huts and hovels, and only boasting one stately mosque and a magnificent palace for the king, built by a famous architect of Granada. So already you're seeing they used to have buildings, but by this time of the Europeans, they're starting to fall apart. Let's keep reading. All the women except the slaves go with their head and faces covered. They have no stamped coin, but plain pieces, yet bigger and lesser, all of pure gold. This king or emperor of Tambut, ruling vast dominions that yield him inexhaustible treasure, which he piles up in bars and billets of pure gold, some of them weighing it, if the reports are true, 300 pounds of weight. Many merchants of Fez, Morocco, and Grand Kari resort to Tambut for the trade of gold, which was brought thither by the people of Mandinga in so great abundance that oftentimes the merchants, having despoiled of all their commodities which they barter with them for the metal, it becomes a drug and either left there till the next return, or else they carry it home again. So yeah. The big question, of course, is why don't these people want to believe in Mansa Musa? Well, it's because if Mansa Musa is true and it fell because of European powers, then basically everything that we're saying is absolutely correct. They don't want to believe it, though.
Just
Like
because
what?
it's not your culture, listen to what I'm saying. Your culture, just because something is not your culture, doesn't mean that they are less than or below than you because they choose to live in huts or whatever. That's what they want to do. That's what you have to let people live their life.
I'm not
That's
comparing it. I'm just
that's their
asking.
customs.
Let me
They
respond to
don't
you
want to,
though.
they
Let me
might not,
respond to you.
they might, can I finish what I'm saying, please?
We gotta go back and forth here. Like I'm asking specifically, what did they have going on? What did
And that's only if we're just looking at the part of Mali. We can look at Sofala, which the Portuguese have entire books based on how they can extract the gold from Sofala, how they can conquer the people who rule it, which they say is the king of Great Zimbabwe who rules Sofala. Or the Stone Kingdom named Dgb, which is in Cameroon. These guys had the nerve to ask what was there. What was there, huh? How about you do us a favor? Pick up a few books. Go look at some of the images of ruins found in Africa. Go look at the Dafufa in Sudan. Go look at some of the buildings built by the Sudanese, the pyramids built by the Sudanese, which are stuffed with gold until the Europeans came and blasted them open and stole the gold. Go look at Great Zimbabwe, and then go look at the giant pillar in Great Zimbabwe, which the Europeans blew up because they thought it had gold inside.
they have going on?
I wasn't done talking though.
Go ahead.
What I'm trying to tell you is that you have to let other people live in their custom. Just because it's not your custom doesn't mean that it's less than or worse than. They might not want to live in a mansion or whatever. It's billionaires in Africa. It's like, bro, if Africa was so sucky or so terrible, why the hell are y'all over there now?
Are all
That's what
cultures
I'm trying to
are all
understand.
cultures
Y'all are
equal?
all
Notice, by the way, that he listed like 5 things they could respond to. And this guy's got like a script in his head. So he's like, are all cultures equal? Because, of course, that's what the comedians want now. Like, oh, their next line of attack is saying that everybody's equal. Oh, let's go after that. And no, you can't prove that all cultures are not equal. How are you going to prove that all cultures are equal or not equal? That's a subjective statement, and you can never prove or disprove it. It's a waste of time conversation.
over South Africa, living good in the nice hotels, in the buildings and all that stuff. Y'all are over there. If we suck so much, get the hell out the land.
Well, let me
Stop
ask you
leeching off
this.
others. Go back to your land and do what you say you
Okay, you're
smart enough
talking
to
you're
do.
talking a lot. We gotta go back and forth.
So
here.
I
If he's talking a lot, then respond to what he has to say. Don't just make up your own question that comes out of nowhere.
I'm sensing that you're upset about it. And if I thought
I'm not really upset. It's just how I talk.
well, if I thought that my people were being oppressed historically and systemically, I would probably be upset too. Let me ask you this. If I were to just grant everything, if I were to say sub-Saharan Africa and even Africa as a whole has been colonized, sucked dry of its resources, and that's exactly the reason why it's in the state and condition it is now. Black Americans are systemically oppressed historically. Now that we live in modern society, you're a black person in America, I'm guessing. You're speaking American English.
Yeah.
So I guess at this point, historical injustice can't be undone. What is preventing black people in Africa and in America even now from...
It's not.
First of all, if you have injustice, the thing that you're looking for is justice, right? Otherwise, we live in an unjust world, or unjust world, if you'd like, which you guys complain about. You guys cry about Africans moving to your country. These guys cry about people moving to their country and then don't understand people coming to other people's countries and removing 90% of the population. To them, that's like, oh, that's fine, that's cool. But then a couple people moving into your neighborhood is like the worst crime ever made. Well, the Africans are there now then, and since you can't change history, apparently, you guys are just going to have to accept that there's Africans in your country now, and more of them are going to come, and you're going to have to accept them, right? Because you can't change history.
You know how good Africa doing right now? You know how many
Africa's-
Africa the fastest every time I say something, y'all try to cut me off. Africa is the fastest growing country right now that's going on today. They about to get their own internet to where they don't even have to depend off of US internet at all.
So I don't know why he said this. First of all, African internet does not rely on American internet or Western internet. Like, it's the internet. The internet is completely independent within your local area and your providers in the areas, but then it's internet connecting with websites from around the world, international, right? You can go to China, New Zealand, Madagascar, websites from Congo. Websites are some of the easiest things to create, by the way. So there's ones from all over the place, and Africa has a ton of them. Apps, all that other nonsense. So no, we don't have to rely on them. The only reason we do rely on them, not rely, but the only reason we do use them is because why not? Why not use them? It's business.
Because they have their own they don't have it yet, but they're getting their own internet called
They're getting Boost Mobile.
Afronet.
They're getting They're getting Metro PCS, I heard.
No, it's Afronet. It's their own internet where they don't have to rely on.
By the way, I hope these guys don't think that the internet in Africa literally comes from America. That would be one of the silliest things ever. I hope they don't think that the people in Africa sit there and wait for the signals to come from America and then they can like hook onto the internet.
No US, because they used to have to rely on Google and get their internet from the US.
We've never had to rely on Google. The whole world uses Google because it's a convenient browser, but there's hundreds of browsers that you can use, some made in Africa, some made in Asia. I mean, right now, if we wanted to, you could use a browser made by the Chinese if you like. But of course, the West does scare tactics. Oh, the Chinese are collecting your data. It's like, yeah, and you guys are not, obviously.
It was taking them so long to come all the way over there to fix it. So now they said, whatever, we do our own shit.
I want
so now
Africa
they
to
get their own
flourish.
internet. They got tech. They got.
So, for many of you who are confused about this, it is true that in remote areas in Africa, it's very difficult to get internet, reliable internet, still there. But you must understand that Africa has got all kinds of internet that is local. I don't understand. Think about how the internet works, by the way. Just think about how it works, where you need, um, first you need a device, then you need these giant towers, and then you need communication between the two. Sometimes they use satellites, which Africa has got about 60 of them in space. There's all kinds of things that are necessary, and all of them exist in almost every single country in Africa. So I don't understand this conversation where people, I don't know if people think that Africa doesn't have internet. And I don't know where they get that from, but yeah. Are there places in Africa that still don't have access to the internet, or it's much more difficult to get it and they have to rely on satellites? Absolutely. But those places are rural, they're whatever. They're not, you're not even in the sort of like shanty towns or whatever, the internet's gonna work pretty well.
Tech. They got tech companies. Like, it's booming over there right now. That's why, and China is investing in it so much because it's
So they see
booming over.
the
It's like
yeah.
what China was 30 years ago. That's what Africa is now.
Mm,
It's growing. It's going to be the new power country. So
okay.
it's already
Okay.
happening.
Let me ask
With
you.
your
Let me
to
ask.
answer
Let
your
me ask you
question,
this. Let me ask you this, because one of the things we were discussing earlier was a matter of comparing cultures, and you said it's not better. One or the other isn't better. It's just different. Do you
This guy is still on that. So how can we discuss this? The culture of Africa and different African places were better than the European cultures, because the people in Europe were doing all kinds of madness, believing in all kinds of nonsense, killing witches and stuff like that, which they brought to Africa, which a lot of Africans think that's part of their culture, but it's not. That's mixed in with Christianity. In Africa, didn't even believe in witches the way that Europeans believed in it. They believed in bad magic. They believed in bad people who did use bad magic, but they weren't witches in the same way that Europeans were, where they, it's mainly women and all this other nonsense.
believe that all cultures are equal?
it's different. Like, is they think their culture is better than yours. You think your culture better than them. It's just an opinion. If
Right.
somebody's happy, want to live in a hut and live in a mud house or whatever, they might be the happiest person in the world. They choose to live there.
So again, we have to separate Africa. People didn't just live in mud huts, and they didn't just live in all of that other stuff. They lived in buildings. Some of them, of course, were made by mud, but these are not the same as mud huts that you see today, where it's stuff put together for, like they're poor, so they take what they can and they put it together. We're talking about proper building things that lasted a couple hundred years in some cases, or they get renovated during the rain season. That's the type of stuff we're talking about. But the areas that were concentrated that had millions of people were made of stone. The Kingdom of Congo, Agadez, Imhambe, whatever. There's like so many of them that I could list right now.
I'm pretty sure if they don't get tired of that and choose not to want to live there, they'll go to. It's plenty cities in Africa that got major mansions, homes, hotels. Like, it's beautiful over there.
Mhm.
Now, I'm not saying the whole Africa, but
So
it's
they're not
places
equal,
over
you're
there.
saying.
Huh?
You're saying so they're not equal because they're different.
I didn't say they're not equal. I'm saying
You
they
said
think
they're
they better,
different.
so they might be.
I think we discussed this earlier. I mean, at this time they're using the word equal, which is a little bit different than the word they used before. Exactly the same is different than equal. So equal meaning, I'm guessing when he says equal, he means equal in the same way that people use the word rights. Like, you got equal rights. It doesn't mean that people are going to be treated literally the same, right? A man and woman have equal rights. That doesn't mean that a man is going to be treated like a woman. So equal in this case, meaning, or the equal civilizations, do you mean they were monetarily equal? Because no, African countries had way more gold than European countries at the time. They had way more stuff to offer. That's why they colonized them. By the way, can you imagine how stupid it would be for the Europeans if they had all the gold, all the diamonds, all everything in their country, and they're like, let's go find a desolate area with nothing to offer and let's colonize it? That would be so stupid for them.
Be better. They might be better.
But you said
They
they're
might
different.
be better in their eyes.
Sure,
Huh?
they might be better, but you're saying they're different, which means they
Yeah,
aren't
they're
the
different.
same.
Everybody's different.
Equal means the same if you mean it in the mathematical way. So if you mean equal not in a political sense and you mean it in a mathematical sense, then yes, it means literally the same. So you show me one city in Europe that's exactly the same as another one in Europe, and then we can talk about that. Like, show me one where they have the exact number of buildings, they're on the exact area, and they have the exact amount of money, they have the exact same people living there, and then we can start talking about it, about equality in that mathematical sense. You can't use that level of equality, that maths equality, in reality, because it doesn't even make any sense. It's like, oh, is this guy equal to that guy? If you mean mathematically, then no, they'll never be the same. One is a little higher, one's a little shorter. Their genes are not the same. They don't look the same. They don't act the same. They can never be equal. To be equal, they'd have to be the same person. If you cut a guy in half, and then one half is the same as the other half, then you can say those are two equal halves.
Equal means the same.
No, they're not the same. No, equal means. Equal means like the same.
Right.
Equal means like the same. You could put it as the same, but equal means like this equals that. Like one equals, like, I'm trying to explain it. But
so is Amsterdam equal to whatever, Rome? Is that what he's saying? Does Rome look exactly the same? Equal, right? We're using the equal sign, meaning the same. Does Rome look exactly like Amsterdam? Like, if I was in Amsterdam, I would not be able to tell. I'd be like, oh, I'm in Rome right now. Stop being stupid.
Yeah, I guess you could relate that as equal, but I'm looking at it as a value wise. Equal as you talking about value wise, meaning that this equals this, like $1 equals $1, or that's what I'm talking about.
So who creates more value, white people or black people globally?
Firstly, what the hell does that mean? And then secondly, again, what the hell does that mean? Do you mean, first of all, I don't even understand the question, who creates more value? How are the Europeans going to create value without black people? What are you talking about? Their natural resources come from Africa. How are they going to create it? You can't even create cell phones without the Africans' help. So what are you talking about? Who creates more value? That's a stupid question. Also, I think what he means is who creates more products. I don't think he means who creates more value, because how do you quantify value? Let me tell you how stupid that question is. That's like asking who creates more equal signs. What? You talk about the product, you talk about the final part. Who creates the end part more, Europeans or Africans? Which, again, if you mean who right now is generating, then you can say the goddamn Chinese are generating a whole ton of products. By the way, where are they getting the resources from? Their natural resources. I'll wait.
As of right now, like that's what I was saying earlier. Of course, you could sit here and say white people doing all this stuff, but you doing all this stuff off the backs of us.
How so?
Off the backs of the people that you're leeching off of.
How so?
That's what I'm saying.
How so?
I just explained it earlier. You leached off of our labor as slaves. You leached off of our land resources. You leached off of oil.
Irish slavery was more lucrative.
Huh?
Irish indentured servitude was more lucrative than.
No, it wasn't. Stop being stupid. People who were eventually paid were not more lucrative than people who were completely free. That's why most of the merchants in the South wanted to replace their indentured servants with slaves, black slaves, even in intermediate roles. We read about this before. You can Google it. Stop being an idiot. The slaves of Africa built way more value in the country than indentured servants. That's dumb. And also, you're looking backwards. Who creates more value? You're being These guys are being deliberately ignorant. And of course, by the way, notice how there's nothing new that is being brought up here. These guys aren't saying anything new. They're saying we've all heard this before. Indentured servitudes by the ones bred. What are you talking about? It's always the same few things. Stop watching Nick Fuentes. Stop watching all these idiots who don't know what the hell they're talking about, and go and actually pick up a book and read it. Also, by the way, it's like insulting your own people. You're telling me that these guys can't create value with slaves? Are you dumb?
Black shadow
I'm not talking
slavery.
about just slavery, as you heard
What
what I just said.
else?
I'm not just talking about slavery. I'm talking about oil, diamonds, gold, slavery also.
You're talking about resources, the resources that they didn't actually know how to extract before Europeans got there.
By the way, if they actually believe this, if they actually believe that the people of Africa didn't know how to extract any of the diamonds or gold or crystal or ambergris or any of these things that they sold at a high price to the Europeans and the Middle Easterners and the Indians and the North Africans, if they think that, then I can understand why they think that there was no civilizations in that area. If you're that naive, let's read this. By the way, amongst the substitute dominions of Monomatapa, which is the name of the king of the Great Zimbabwe area, are Agog and the bordering and east on the Newland and the west of the king, Taroka, Toria, and some called Batwa and Batua, takes beginning according to the Lenshot and Pidgesot at the first cape, and so to the river of Magnus, having in the south the foot of the mountains of the moon, and at aforementioned the cape in the north, and the river Magnus in the west, and the stream of Bravagal. The chiefest cities are Zenebra and Fatuka. In this country, far to the inland on the plain, in the middle of the many iron mills, stands a famous structure called Zimbabwe, built square like a castle, with hewn stone of a wonderful bigness. The walls are more than 25 foot broad, but the height not answerable. Above the gate appears the inscriptions which cannot be read or understood, nor could any that have seen it know what the people used such letters. Near this place are more such buildings called by the same name, signifying a court or palace, and for that all the places where the emperor at any time makes his abode are called Zimbabwe. This building is guessed to be one of the king's houses. Now, here's the part about them extracting the stuff. The inhabitants report it a work of the devil, themselves only building with wood, and ever that for strength it exceeds the sort of the Portuguese, the seashore, about 150 miles from thence. The emperor keeps a garrison in it, as well as the safeguard of the place, as the emperor keeps blah 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 several women he maintains there. A little way from the seashore are many beautiful places, richly verdered with grass and stalks of cattle, but destitute of wood, so that the inhabitants use the dried dung and beasts for fuel. They have many rich gold mines, whereof Boro and Quanter are their names, of two lying about a mile and a half from Sofala. The inhabitants of these people is but mean, being only the rough skins of beasts. The wealth of the country, besides the before mentioned mines, consists in elephants' teeth, whereof they fell infinite numbers. They sell infinite numbers, and salt, which they send abroad into most parts of Africa to their no small advantage. The city Fatuka boasts great abundance of gold, silver, and pretorious stones beyond all her neighbors. They have a prince of their own, but a vassal to the emperor. His name is Buro. We can even go to the kingdom of Sofala, where it says the kingdom of Sofala Motuka reaches from the Cape of Current to the river Chwama and Kwama, wherein are several gold mines belonging to the Monomatapa. Isn't that weird? Isn't that weird that it's like documented that they have mines? Okay, so from here we read in the report on Kingdom of Congo, in the kingdom of the Nzikus are several copper mines and a great quantity both of red and gray sandalwood. The red is called Tavila, and the gray, which is the most valuable to the Chikongo. A powder is made from it, which emits a delicious perfume. Medicines also are prepared from it, the natives mixing the powder with the palm oil and anointing their entire body to preserve themselves in. So there's copper mines, silver mines, diamond mines, gold mines. Goddamn, pick your pick.
Like, we're talking about the most resource dense continent ever. And black people, when we got there, they were living in huts.
To get all his gold.
Yeah, I think that's like historical revisionism. I'm not super well read on the Mansa Musa.
So you're not well read on it, but you know it's fake. Doesn't that sound... To admit that is one of the most stupid... Oh my God. You're not well read on Mansa Musa, but it's fake. It's historical revisionism, but you know nothing about it. This is the people we're dealing with.
I like to do is like to spew out lies because you hear shit and you believe it, but a lot of the stuff that you're saying is not true. They knew
what
how
have
to
I lied about?
Stuff.
What have I lied about?
What you just said right now. What you just said right now.
What did I say?
They didn't know how to extract. They didn't know how to extract their gold and
But
diamonds
they didn't,
until y'all got there. They've been extracting their gold. They've been extracting their diamonds way before y'all got there. That is a lie.
Well, let me ask you this. So we got there and then we conquered. How was that possible?
So I'm going to release a video about this. So I'm going to cut this video here and make a part 2 because they're going to debate for a much longer time. But it's going to be important for us to separate these because already I think there's already too much information in this video. So thank you very much.